Hey y'all, Pastor Sam here, and welcome to the Sermon Cast for First Christian Church in Hammond, Louisiana. Here at FCC Hammond, we are a gathering of Jesus followers caught up in this crazy Jesus movement seeking to bring healing and wholeness to our fractured world. We hope you find this message meaningful and encouraging. We would love to connect with you to answer any questions you might have about us, Jesus, or just life in general. How you can contact us can be found in the description below. Just remember, God loves you, we love you. May you experience grace and peace in your journey today and every day. And now, the Sermon Cast.
Morning, everyone. So today's sermon is technically about empowerment, but it's really about power. And what on earth are we supposed to do with it? Because power to me, and I think to you, to everyone really, it's a weird thing. Some of us pretend we don't have any. Some of us hoard it, like we're going to hoard Halloween candy coming up. And some of us, me especially, I feel misuse it without even realizing it. But Jesus had all of this power in really the entire cosmos. And what did he do? He used it to wash feet, to heal, to feed, to make space at the table for people that no one would sit next to. And that's really what made him an ultimate change maker. He didn't flex. He really flipped power. He didn't stockpile. He shared it. And that really changes everything. And I won't tell you that. Maybe I just told you the whole sermon. Maybe I didn't. But let's just say by the time we're done today, my hope is that we will see empowerment less like a buzzword and more like something that we can actually and should actually live out in our work, in our family, in our everyday moments, and really come to see that it's really the only way how we're supposed to move and live in the world.
We have heard the next reading each week of this series in an ancient Christian tradition called Lectio Divina, of repeating readings in order to understand more fully. Hear now another interpretation of the story.
Now the 12 returned from their travels and told him what they had done, whom they had seen, and how they had spread the news of God's kingdom.
Let us go out into the wilderness for a while and rest ourselves.
The crowds gathered as always, and Jesus and the 12 couldn't eat because so many people came and went. They could get no peace until they boarded a boat and sailed toward a deserted place. But the people would not be put off so easily. Those along the shore who recognized Jesus followed along the coast. People pushed out of all the cities and gathered ahead of him, so that when Jesus came ashore and saw this crowd of people waiting for him in a place that should have been relatively deserted, he was moved with compassion. They were like sheep without a shepherd. He began to teach them many things as the day passed. At last, the disciples came to Jesus.
It is getting late, and there is nothing around for miles. Send these people to the surrounding villages so they can buy something to eat.
Why don't you give them something to eat?
What? It would cost a fortune to buy bread for these people.
Does anyone have any bread? Go and see.
There are 5 pieces of flat bread and 2 fish, if that makes any difference.
Listen, tell them to gather in smaller groups and sit on that green patch of grass.
And so the disciples gathered the peoples in groups of 100 or of 50, and they sat down. Jesus took the 5 pieces of flat bread and the 2 fish, looked up to heaven, thanked God for the food, and broke it. He gave the pieces to the disciples to distribute, and all the people ate until no one was hungry. Then they gathered 12 baskets full of leftovers. That day, 5,000 people ate their fill of the bread when Jesus fed the hungry crowd.
Our second reading today is from Mark chapter 10. Jesus and his followers came into Jericho. As Jesus was leaving Jericho, together with his disciples and a sizable crowd, a blind beggar named Bartimaeus, Timaeus' son, was sitting beside the road. When he heard that Jesus of Nazareth was there, he began to shout, "Jesus, Son of David, show me mercy." Many scolded him, telling him to be quiet, but he shouted even louder, "Son of David, show me mercy." Jesus stopped and said, "Call him forward." They called the blind man. "Be encouraged. Get up. He's calling you." Throwing his coat to the side, he jumped up and came to Jesus. Jesus asked him, "What do you want me to do for you?" The blind man said, "Teacher, I want to see." Jesus said, "Go, your faith has healed you." At once he was able to see, and he began to follow Jesus on the way.
Thank you, everybody. Love the team effort. So much better, so much better. How's everybody doing? Yeah, you better be, man. That weather out there. Why are we inside? Why did we not build an amphitheater? Or can we do that? Can we get a retractable roof? I think that's a good idea. I think that's something to shoot for. But holy Moses, it's great. What's that, George? Oh, wait a minute. George. I think George is like, Let's get done this other list first. Good point. I like all the leave. Yeah, you're right. You're right. What am I thinking, George? You're right. You know, it's been a cool week, and my daughter, our daughter turned 18 this past, yesterday. And it was, I mean, you guys just did a wedding too. It's weird, isn't it? It's weird. It's weird. It's like when your kids make milestones when they're, as they inch up the adult scale. And relationships changes, and it was a really enjoyable time, and it was nice just to exist as humans and adults, just kind of eating dinner and doing things and all that stuff. And it really made me start thinking a lot about, this is not a surprise, probably to anybody, about. It wouldn't be a surprise to you that the first thing that comes to my mind when I was thinking about that is power. And you're like, wait a minute, what? But I mean, if you've been around me long enough, you know that I think everybody has lenses. They have primary lenses, secondary lenses, and my primary lens is I just cannot help but to see almost everything through a lens of power. I'm always curious who has it. I'm curious how it's used, who it bypasses, and how it impacts people in a room. And it does not matter what role I'm playing in life, whether that's as a pastor, a partner, a father, a friend, just a normal person. You can put me in a city meeting, you can put me in a clergy gathering, you can put me at a food line or a dinner table, my daughter's birthday, you can put me anywhere. And that's how I'm going to think. I'm going to think, where's the power at? Who's holding it? Who's been invited to it? And I've actually, and as much as I don't like binaries, my brain always goes to that. And there's really kind of two ditches, I would say. And I'll speak for me, but spoiler alert, it's really everybody. I think there's two ditches that we tend to go into, one or the other, and me especially. Because you have one side, when it comes to power, it's when I do like scapegoating. You know what I mean? Like passing the buck. Somebody else broke it. Somebody else needs to fix it. It's their fault. This person should handle it. It's basically, hey, in this situation, somebody else has the power, and they need to do something about it. But then on the other side, and this is probably the side I spend entirely too much time on, is a stage hogger. I don't pass the buck, I just grab it, and I don't let it go. I'll take the mic, keep the keys, I'll do it myself. That's the worst thing about me. I'll just do it myself and not tell anybody, or talk to or invite anybody into it. which always works great right up until it doesn't, and then it's a mess. And it's this overarching sentence. If scapegoating is someone else has the power, with stage hogging, it's I should have the power. And you can see how one ditch dodges responsibility and power altogether, and then the other ditch just hoards it. And the crazy thing about it is neither of them empower anybody in the whole process of it. So yeah, let's do it. Where do you hang out the most? Like, are you a scapegoater? Like, it's somebody else's problem? So there's a lot of people smiling. Who would have meant this in church? You're right. What about a stage hogger? No one wants to admit it. Oh, yeah. Oh, why are even stage hoggers hog this question? You see that? They're just like, that's me. And then, of course, the scapegoater's like, somebody else is probably the scapegoater, not me. Isn't that funny? It's not a thing to. I'm not trying to call out anybody or anything. I mean, I'm the worst offender, but I do think it's a normal human behavior. It's not anything that's like a horrible thing, or it's just a normal human pattern and behavior that we have, and that's fine until you decide to follow Jesus. Because, and we just heard it again in a different way, when it comes to the feeding of the 5,000, like Jesus refuses to let people sit in ditches. Just refuses. He gives you a whole new way altogether. And like when he comes to that part, it's like, you do it. You fix the supper. And he asks, how many loaves do you have? Let's take an inventory. You can see in that whole process, Jesus doesn't let disciples scapegoat, because they try to do that. Like, we can't feed this, but he doesn't let them stage hog it either. He gives them a whole different thing. He's like, you give them something to eat, and we'll distribute all of this work so everyone shares in this miracle. And see, and I'll say it again, but Jesus just always surprises me of how he is the most powerful person in all of time and space, and he constantly gives power away to people. And you walk away from this, and it's clear you can't get away from it with Jesus. When it comes to being followers of Jesus, we are all empowered to do and share in all, not some, not part, all of the work. And that's what changes the world, which is what we've been really trying to talk about this whole series about change making and being change makers. Good or bad news, we're all made in the image of God. I think it's great news, because that means we can be change makers just like Jesus, to lead into compassion and collaboration and creativity and empowerment. And we've been talking about that, like how that works when it comes to change making. And we've talked about compassion, how compassion it turns us from spectators into change makers, and how collaboration really isn't just a tactic that we use to get stuff done. It's how we are supposed to get things done. And Bonnie last week talked about creativity and how every single person here is creative. Every single person on the planet is creative. And it's because we're made to create. That's literally what we're here to do. And then this last week, we're going to talk about the power and practice of empowerment and what it really means, and practically what happens. Like, there's actually rhythms in empowerment. And just to give you context about this particular scripture, and I'm not being biased, maybe I am, Mark has a extremely strong thread of power running through it from beginning to end. Like, Mark leads things off with Jesus announcing his power, and then Jesus sharing his power, and then how that power is misunderstood, but then how it's multiplied. And he uses all kinds of ways to show how this power is used, like through bread and in storms and all across these boundaries. And And then up to this particular scripture, Jesus is on the road to Jerusalem, and he makes predictions about the cross, and there's several arguments about greatness, which is funny. And then I always love that absolutely tone-deaf one about thrones. Read it for yourself. It's wonderful. But then Mark shows us like that power that Jesus has again when Jesus steps into Jericho and shows us what empowerment looks like again. And it's through this blind beggar, Bartimaeus. And we can see not only what it does look like, but what it doesn't look like in that whole process. Like right about in the middle, about 49, after Mark sets the scene, Mark wrote that Jesus stopped and said, call him forward. And this is important. They called the blind man. Be encouraged, get up, he's calling you. Now that's a first key thing right there. Real empowerment decentralizes power. And you see what Jesus did there? He says, just like the bread, just like, you call him forward. And look, they called the blind man forward. They called them. And you can see how even there was some tension with that crowd, how just that little shift in giving of power, they took it. And they shared it, and they invited him forward. And you see, that shows you what empowerment doesn't look like. It's not tokenism, right? It's not tossing somebody the power or the mic or whatever for just a moment, and then when they're done, just like, I'm going to bring it back. Or he doesn't. It centers itself on a desire that's happening with Bartimaeus, like he wants to be healed, and it's recognizing agency, and even how you would look after he is healed. He even decentralizes the power there. It came from Jesus, right? Jesus healed him. No, he says, your faith has made you well. He even decentralizes that power. So empowerment decentralizes. And then it goes down just a couple of lines on 51, and we'll see a beautiful thing what empowerment does. Jesus asked Bartimaeus, what do you want me to do for you? And you see how empowerment dignifies a person. Jesus knew what was wrong with Bartimaeus. Come on. He could have easily just been over with, but no, he doesn't even decide what Bartimaeus wants. He gives Bartimaeus the power to say, what do you want, Bartimaeus? What do you want from me? And it gives Bartimaeus power, probably power he's never had before. And it's that practice of, we've talked about it before, that platinum rule of do unto others what they want. Like, it's really easy to look, the dude is blind and laying on a mat, heal him. Like, we didn't have to talk about it, but he still stops and does this for Bartimaeus. And it shows you how like empowerment isn't about power over or power at somebody. It's not control dressed up as kindness. It gives somebody the voice first. Even though if you know exactly what's wrong, it lets them vocalize it and share what they want. And then we act. It doesn't go, all too often we act first and then find out what the problem is. But empowerment always dignifies a person. And finally, this last one is perhaps one of the things, if not the thing, we miss the most. And interestingly enough, it's the most empowering thing about empowerment. In that last line, Jesus said, go, your faith has healed you. And at once he was able to see, and he began to follow Jesus on the way. Now you see, we already talked about this. He dignified Bartimaeus by giving him a voice. What do you want me to do? And then he gave agency and decentralized the power to to Bartimaeus by saying, your faith has made you well. But then we see at that very end how empowerment disciples. Because that little thing, on the way, we forget sometimes we weren't Christians for quite some time. In fact, Christians, fun fact, was an insult. It started off as an insult when we were first coined it. We were just called people of the way. And so when he's talking about the way, it means Bartimaeus got up and became a follower of Jesus and walked with the disciples, was there with Jesus, and learned to live this pattern of life by living it with them. And you see, that's what I loved about Jesus. Jesus never just says, boop, go on, whatever. He always offers a path forward. And whether it's himself or his disciples or a group, he always invites somebody to say, hey, we're going to continue to empower you by teaching you how to keep doing this and then doing it for other people. And you see how real empowerment doesn't just fix a problem, it forms a disciple. It forms somebody who wants to go, wait a minute, I have been empowered by the God. I've been empowered by God to empower other people. And he's teaching me how to do that. And you see how, like, all too often, how we do empowerment, it's often just a hype kind of fest, or we just hand it off and then go. And then we just say, hey, you're good? All right, bye. Instead of just staying there with the person and letting them become a part of our rhythms and learning how to give empowerment just as well as we have received it. And you see, what Jesus is teaching us in here about empowerment is that, and it's a weird little dynamic. It's not enabling. It's not abandonment. It isn't doing everything for people, and it isn't making them do it alone. Do you see? And it's power with somebody. It's restoring power. It's restoring participation and responsibility and dignity, so that people can do the same thing to the people around them. And it's showing us where power ultimately belongs. In a way to say it, right in the word empowerment, is power is meant for someone else. For this particular case, it was for Bartimaeus. And it gave him a voice, a choice, and a way to walk. And empowerment is just giving power back to the one it was always meant for, so that they can rise and walk and do the same way to somebody else. And maybe, hopefully, if you remember anything, you remember this. Like, all power is meant to be given away always. I'll tell you this. There's been a lot of weird little things going on in my life with, maybe it's because of Katrina, but it made me recall, and I always remember this, but it just came to my mind, like when I was an atheist, when I read the Bible, and I read that particular passage in John when Jesus was about to wash the feet of the disciples, I just remember this clear as day, and I still remember it. It's like Jesus, knowing all power and authority was upon him. And it says he humbled himself, and we just go past that. Like, it's like, oh yeah, that's what Jesus does. I'm like, no. Like, why would Jesus, who was part of creating everything, do that? He doesn't need to do that. But it showed me right away that the only appropriate use of power is to always give it away. Always. And if I would say there's one beat through my entire life and my faith and my ministry, it is that power belongs not with me, but with the person across from me. And not to poke bears, that's why, and pardon me for my attire, it's just too nice outside. That's why I don't wear a robe. I don't want to say, I have education. Yes, I have credentials. Why do I need to tell you that? Why do I need to dress up like I'm something better than you? I'm not. Why do I don't like being over you? Because I'm not. I'm just a person that this is what God wants me to do. But I am the same person as you, just with a different job. That's it. And if you'll see, one of the most frustrating things about me, and hopefully you guys have been around me long enough, is I am constantly trying to work myself out of a job. Because that is what a real pastor does. Give the power away to the people they serve and care for. In fact, I'll just tell you, this is not just some person ranting and raving. This is scientific. There was a study, and I'll turn this into the church world, by Fuller Institute over in California, where they were trying to figure out why there were some churches that were succeeding, and surprise, surprise, why so many are failing. And it was just clear as day. There was one singular through line about why every single church that was either holding steady or growing, they had all one thing in common. They were growing younger. And you're like, well, duh. But no, this is the vein. They were growing younger because they were giving power to the younger people. They weren't just pretending to give them power. They were saying, hey, 24-year-old who really is committed to this, here's the key to the church. You got to make sure the AC's turned on and this, and they gave them actual real power. Let them sit on board meetings, make big decisions, let them fail miserably, and then be there to pick them up when it was over with not consequences, but no punishment. Just like, hey, how did that work? Okay, let's try another way. And I hope that as we go forward with the Center for Celebration, we're going to do that same thing. That we're giving back power to people it always belonged to, which was the people in this community. Because, we're going to decentralize power. That's why already it's not just this is the Center of Celebration ran by FCC Hammond. This is your Center for Celebration. What do you want here? Look what happened. We just had a couple conversations. Here's somebody like Callie comes up clear out of the nowhere and says, oh, hey. And it was decentralized power. And it really makes you ask a question, and something that I want to always have in your mind when we talk about decentralizing is like, where do we hand over the keys? Like who, when? And always keep that in mind is like, these aren't mine. These were never mine. They're ours to give away. And hopefully you'll see that it dignifies people, and we've already tried to do that as much as we possibly could. We ask people legitimately, what do you need? Like, what do you need to celebrate? What do you want? What do you dream of? And we put their voice in the center, and that's what tells us what we're going to do, how we're going to move forward. And then even after that, it's like, what can we do to, and even, next level up is like, what can we do to support you in this? Not tell you what to do or give you, it's like, how can we support you? Even if we don't fully engage or understand what they're doing. And this last one, this is where this way of doing things, this is what's going to change things. And this is why it changes things in other churches. It gives us a chance to actually disciple people. And this is the one thing I'll say, because not all of us can cook or clean or set up or take tickets or do all these kind of things. But I don't care how old you are, what your health is, every single person in here can mentor somebody. Always. And I would encourage you, if you're not already, do it. You should always be passing along your wisdom to somebody else. To teach, to listen to them, to pass on what you know, so they can make all new mistakes, not just the ones you made. And there's actually a pattern for my teachers in the room. You should know this. is this pattern of teaching, of discipling, of we do the work, but then somebody watches us, and then we do the work and they help us. And then what happens is they do the work, and then we help them. And then they're going to do the work, and we're just going to watch. That's the pattern of discipleship. That's the pattern that Jesus taught us how to live so many thousands of years ago. And I'm hoping you see, like, through this series, how we have been and are and can continue to be change makers in this city, in this place, in our families' lives, in how compassion sees what's going on and moves us to do something about it, and how collaboration shares the work, and how creativity makes new spaces, and how empowerment gives power away so that all of this work can keep going, this whole cycle of changing. And so I want to spend the next couple minutes just sitting like we always do, letting the Spirit speak to us as individuals, and we'll continue in our time of worship together. So receive this benediction. Go into the world, risking something big for something good, and know that God has empowered you to respond to evil with goodness wherever and whenever you may go in the world. So have a great week. God bless. Amen.